Hi guys, welcome back to JML Fitness. It is Fitness Friday, so it's time to deep dive into another random fitness topic. In today's video, I'm going to be comparing myself to an average person. Let me give you a bit of background first. A few years back, I was 120 kilograms and chronically unfit. At that point, I struggled to even run 100 meters. It was not good at all. This was definitely caused by a lifestyle of just drinking too much and doing pretty much zero exercise. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. The whole process of gaining this weight did take a couple of years, but when you are living like that, it is pretty much inevitable that your health will suffer in some way. In 2020, I peaked and reached a BMI of 35, which is classified as super obese. At this point, my general health was awful, definitely way below average, and it really needed to change. Otherwise, I would be setting myself up for a life which would be a lot more difficult than necessary. So about 4 years ago now, I decided to start the journey of fixing myself. It's not been easy and it's definitely not a linear process. There's been a lot of mistakes made, but generally I feel like I've stuck on the correct path. So with that being said, I thought it'd be interesting to see if I have taken myself from way below average in terms of health and fitness to the top of the bell curve, meaning 100% average. So what constitutes the average person? This is obviously quite a difficult question, and depending on whatever category you're looking at, the average person is going to be completely different. Speaking of which, the categories I've decided to look at are general health and fitness, cardio, and strength. General health is pretty simple. It's just things like height, weight, how many hours I sleep, basic stuff like that. Cardio, also pretty simple. Basically just running, cycling, any sort of endurance activity.
Stay hard!
And the final one is strength, which is pretty simple as well, just how much I can lift in the gym, to be honest.
They don't know me, son!
So I feel like these three should give a nice all-round comparison of where I stand, and it should be pretty interesting to see if I am average. Right, so let's jump straight in with my health stats. So for all of these, I've tried to find statistics relating to people in the UK because that's where I'm from. A quick Google search found this cozy BBC article. According to the Office of National Statistics, the average UK male is 175 centimeters and weighs 83.6 kilograms. So how do I compare? As you may have guessed just by looking at me, I am quite a bit taller and quite a bit heavier than average. My height as of today, and hopefully for the foreseeable future, is 185 centimeters, and my weight is 98 kilograms. So like I said, a lot higher than average, which isn't great. Obviously the height can't change, but the weight is something I am working on, and hopefully I should get that closer to the average in good time. Right, next up is BMI, which stands for Body Mass Index. Basically for this, they take your height and your weight and do a magic formula on it, and it pops out a BMI number. Basically, this number tells you how fat you are. In 2021, the average BMI for UK males was 27.5, and for females, it was 27.2. So how do I stack up compared to them? My BMI as of today was 28.7, so I am only a tiny bit above average, which I am pretty happy with. BMI also attaches a word to your number score. So my score of 28.7 is classed as overweight, which is an upgrade from last month when I was classified as obese. My goal is to get into the normal category. That would be pretty nice. Anyway, let's move on. Next one is resting heart rate. This is basically how many times a minute your heart beats while you're in a relaxed state. Mine is measured using my Garmin smartwatch. This little device tracks most of the stats which I'm going to use in this video actually, and is pretty good buy. So what's the average resting heart rate for people in the UK? A little bit of research gave me this article from the British Heart Foundation. They say the average resting heart rate for people in the UK is between 60 and 100 beats per minute. So how do I compare? Well, my Garmin says that my average resting heart rate over the last 4 weeks has been 44. That is quite a lot lower than average, which I thought was quite weird, so I decided to dig a little deeper. Turns out the British Heart Foundation measured their heart rates while awake, which apparently makes quite a bit of difference. I did a bit more Googling and found out that the average resting heart rate while sleeping is closer to 40 to 50 beats per minute rather than 60 to 100. So it turns out my average of 44 is a bit more normal if that's taken into account. I started collecting this heart rate data back in 2020 when I first got a smartwatch. That was just when I was starting my fitness journey, so it's quite interesting to see how my resting heart rate has changed over time. In March 2020, 2020, my resting heart rate was 58, which still isn't that high, but it is still a lot higher than it is now. It really shows how much of a difference just doing some exercise and losing a bit of weight can do for your heart. All right, next up we have step count. I thought maybe this should be in cardio, but I figured just taking steps is simple enough to be in general health, so here we are. Again, my data is coming from my Garmin smartwatch. It takes my step count every day and saves it in the app, so I can tell you that for the last year, my average step count has been 10,054 steps, which is just over the recommended amount of 10K for people in the UK. However, even if they recommend 10,000 steps, I don't think many people actually do that many, so let's check out what the real stats are. According to the NHS, we are a nation of chronic non-walkers. We have an average step count of just 3,000 to 4,000. That seems ridiculously low for me, but I guess it is what it is. Right, next up we have sleep. Guess how many hours the average Brit sleeps per night? 4, 6, 8? As it turns out, according to the 2020 UK sleep study, the average man gets 6.17 hours and the average woman gets even less at 6.04 hours. That again seemed like a really low number to me. Over the past year, I have had an average of 7.75 hours of sleep, which is over an hour more than average. The Garmin really gives loads of information about your sleep and about the quality of it. It shows that over the past year, my sleep and waking times have been very consistent, which is probably one of the reasons why I sleep so well. I'm no sleep expert, but I would bet that many of us would feel a lot better if we got more sleep. Right, that's it for health stats. Let's move on to cardio. So cardio is what I spend the vast majority of my time doing, so I would like to be above average for most of these. Otherwise, it would show that all my hours of training have gone to waste. All right, so let's split cardio into the 3 big ones. We've got swimming, biking, and running. If you want to see me try some other ones, then be sure to whack a comment down below. Let's start with running and the humble 5K. A quick Google shows that the average finishing time for a park run in 2020 was 32 minutes and 30 seconds. So how do I compare? My best ever 5K was 22 minutes. However, that was last year and I'm definitely not at that level right now. I think as of today, I could run a pretty comfortable 25-minute 5K, which is still quite a bit above average. However, it's worth pointing out that if you go back in time to 2005, the average finishing time for a 5K park run was 22 minutes and 17 seconds. So if we went back in time to then, I would be struggling to hit the average time. So you might think that because the average finishing times are going up, that people are getting less fit. But I don't think that's the case. The real reason is that there are people who previously wouldn't have even ran a 5K, but now feel comfortable enough to join in. This shows that events are becoming more accessible and more welcoming to non-runners, which is definitely a good thing. You don't need to be a mega speedy runner to rock up to your local park run. Anyone can turn up and have a good time, which is 100% what we want and is the best way to get new people into the sport. All right, moving on to the 10K. This is getting a bit more serious now. I think most people would struggle to rock up to a 10K and run the whole thing. Most of us would probably need at least a little bit of training to be able to do a 10K well. So according to the shoe manufacturer Asics, the average 10K time for a male between 25 and 30 is 53:31. So where do I stand? My best 10K was set actually just a few weeks ago. I managed to squeeze in just under 50 minutes. So my average time is about 4 minutes faster than average.
There is no tomorrow.
Right, really getting into the long distance stuff now. Half marathon. Runner's World says the average finishing time for a male is 1 hour 55 minutes and for females it's 2 hours and 11 minutes. I've bagged quite a few half marathons in my time. First one I did was in 2021 and that one was pretty tough, but I managed to get round in 2 hours and 8 minutes. That is quite a bit slower than the average. The next one I did was in 2022 and for that one I just about got in under 2 hours, which at the time I was pretty happy with as well. However, the best time I managed was in 2023. This is when everything came together. I managed to smash it out in a time of 1 hour and 46 minutes, taking me well below the average finishing time. That was where my half marathoning peaked. I have definitely dropped off since then. Earlier this year, I did another half marathon and I was back up to around 2 hours. So overall, there's quite a range of finishing times there. When I'm at my peak fitness, I can go below the average, but normally I'm quite a bit above it. All right, let's move on to the last of the running distances. This is the big one, the marathon. So I've only ever done one of these and it was horrible. I finished in a time of 4 hours and 23 minutes. How does that compare to the average? So I found this data for the 2023 London Marathon. The average time for a male here is 4 hours and 12 minutes. So I'm quite a bit slower than that. I want to do some more marathons in the future, but it's just such a long distance and it takes ages to train for it. So it probably won't happen anytime soon. I also ruined my toe last time I did a full marathon, so it's definitely not on the bucket list. Right, that's enough running. Let's move on to swimming.
We've been swimming, and we've developed a taste for it.
So I'll admit straight up that I am not the greatest swimmer. I only started swimming properly a few months ago. When I first started, I was swimming really slowly, and after like 2 lengths, I was out of breath. However, in those few months, I've got myself to a standard where I can swim 1500 meters in the open water, which I had to do for my half Ironman. So that's the distance I'm going to use, 1500 meters in open water. That took me around 40 minutes, which works out to a pace of 2 minutes and 30 seconds per 100 meters. So how do I compare to the average? Well, I found a website called swimminglevel.com. It says for a 30-year-old male, a beginner time for 1500 meters is 46:25. So it's good to know I'm at least in the beginner category. It also said a good novice time is 37 minutes. So I'm currently between a beginner and a novice, which I will take. It's worth mentioning what beginner and novice actually mean in this context. They say a beginner is someone who's been swimming for around 1 month, and a novice is someone who's been swimming for around 6 months. So to fit in between those times is pretty reasonable. Right, that's all she wrote for swimming. Let's move on to cycling. So in cycling, there are a few metrics we can use, but the most common one is probably FTP. FTP stands for functional threshold power, which is the amount of power in watts that you can hold for an hour. There are many ways of testing this. If you have an indoor trainer, you can do a ramp test, or even better, do a 20-minute max power test. I decided to opt for the 20-minute test. For this, I managed a pretty respectable power of 305 watts. This isn't your final FTP figure because you need to multiply it by 0.95 to account for the test being slightly shorter. So after doing that, I found my FTP to be 283 watts. So how does that stack up to the rest of the population? For this, I found a website ran by TrainerRoad. TrainerRoad is a training app used by many cyclists, so they should have some pretty accurate numbers. They say that the average FTP for experienced cyclists is 271. So my FTP is 283 watts, which puts me slightly above average. However, in cycling, weight is very important. So people very rarely use your raw FTP number as an end-all metric. Normally, they will take your watts per kilogram, which is simply your FTP divided by how heavy you are. For me, that is 283 watts divided by 98 kilograms, which gives me close to 2.9 watts per kilogram. So how do I compare when weight is taken into account? The average watts per kilogram for experienced males is 3.75 watts per kilogram, so I am quite a bit below that. They say the average for beginner males is 2.81, so I am only just slightly above being a beginner. That is a bit disappointing. I thought I'd be a bit higher than that, but it's just my weight holding me back at this point. Hopefully in a few months the weight will start shedding off and then I will be a lot stronger in terms of watts per kilogram. All right, that's all the cardio done. Let's move on to the strength section.
Who's gonna carry the boats?
So a bit of background in my strength training history. When I was a much younger man, I used to go to the gym quite a lot, but recently I had my quarter life crisis and it seems cardio and cycling are the main things I do at the moment. Anyway, I'm getting my excuses in nice and early because I don't think this will be particularly impressive. I've been going to the gym consistently for about a month now. I'm following a PPL plan, which stands for push-pull legs. When I returned to the gym recently, the first week was all about just finding a comfortable starting weight for each of the lifts. So once I'd found that, I I would just increase it by a tiny bit each week and hope I could still lift it. Like I said, I've only been going a month, so most of these are pretty low still. Let's start with the classic, the bench press. During my first session, I tried doing it with just the bar, which felt ridiculously easy. I then put 10 kilograms on each side, which made a total of 40 kilograms. Again, that felt doable. So I put 20 kilograms on each side, which gave me 60 kilograms. It was pretty challenging, but I could get it up a few times, which is sort of what you want. Since then, I've increased it a few times, and as of my most recent session, I am on 72.5 kilograms. I did that for 3 sets of 5 reps. So how does that compare to the average gym goer? For this, I found a website called Strength Level. This compares your lifts to everyone else and puts you in a category. The categories are beginner, novice, intermediate, advanced, and elite. So for the bench press, it says a beginner should be able to push 47 kilograms. Good to know I'm at least in the beginner category. Novices should be able to bench 70 kilograms. So I'm just edging into the novice category. However, it's worth pointing out that the numbers on Strength Level are just 1 rep maxes, and like I said, I managed to do 72.5 for 5 reps. I haven't done a 1 rep max attempt on bench press, and to be honest, I probably won't be because I don't want to crush myself, but I'd like to think if I were to try that, I would be able to push out a few more kilograms at least and hopefully get 80. Anyway, for the bench press, I sit between novice and intermediate, which I am pretty happy with considering I've only been back at the gym for about a month. Anyway, next up we have the deadlift. Back in the day when I actually used to go to the gym properly, this was by far my strongest lift. At one point I managed to get it up to 155 kilograms, but since then I have definitely regressed a lot. I actually don't do proper deadlifts in this program. I'm doing something called Romanian deadlifts, which are slightly different, but let's not get into that right now. So on strengthlevel.com it says that a beginner should be able to Romanian deadlift 55 kilograms. And a novice should be able to do 84 kilograms. That's pretty close to where I am actually. My last session was 70 kilograms for 10 reps, which is not too bad. So I think my 1 rep max would be quite close to the novice standard of 84 kilograms. Again, not too bad, and I'll happily take that. Okay, moving on. Final one is bent over rows. For this one, beginner is 41 kilograms, novice is 60 kilograms. Again, I am around novice level. In my last sesh, I was doing 60 kilograms for 8 reps. Again, not too bad for someone who's only just got back to it. So those are the main lifts I do. Obviously there are other things in the program, but if I went into every single lift, this video would be a week long. Of course, it's always important to only focus on yourself. If you get hung up on comparing yourself to other people's numbers, you will never be happy. They say comparison is the thief of joy. So just focus on improving yourself. As long as you are progressing week to week, then that's all you can ask for. For me, I have always gone to the gym, but very sporadically. I've never stuck at it for more than a few months at a time. So I'm hoping that this is the time I stick with it for at least a year. If I manage to do that, then hopefully there are some major gains to be made. This video was a bit different compared to normal, so I hope you enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to be sticking with the gym, so hopefully there'll be some more gym content coming soon. Of course, along with all the cycling and running stuff. I'm hoping to keep it more varied going forward. If you guys are trying to improve yourself, just remember it's all about consistency. Nothing good comes quick, so just be sure to stick with it day in and day out. All right, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you for more next week.
Do you stay hard?